Loading. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever I-95 Sports Network MVP podcast here. I am Hunter Metnick. Alongside me is Zach Vinci, and
Hello,
we're
everyone.
super excited for this. We've had a couple previous podcasts on my YouTube channel, but this is the first one we're doing live on I-95. We are an NBA channel where we talk about everything and anything NBA related. We had
Pretty much.
two previous podcasts in the past, which we talked about our draft predictions and free agency, and now we're here to talk about all the moves that Eastern Conference teams made during free agency and during the draft. So, yeah, Zach, if you want to introduce yourself to everyone.
Yeah, I'm Zach Vinci. I'm a freshman student at Syracuse University, and I'm a big Philadelphia 76ers fan. That's pretty much all you really need to know about me.
Yeah, so it's great to be here. Want to thank I-95 and Bobby Blackjack for the opportunity to go live here.
Absolutely.
And yeah, let's get right into it. So the Eastern, the NBA's been all over the place recently. We've had a lot of signings, a lot of unexpected stuff. I don't think our draft predictions video was too accurate besides the top three, and then also during free agency.
Yeah. It's the Patrick Williams that really screwed everything up. Once the Bulls took Patrick Williams, everything we said went down the drain because neither of us had him in the top 10. So
Yeah,
it shows
exactly.
what we know.
I know, right? So, there was a lot of different moves made during the offseason, and we're here to talk about it. And today we will be talking mainly about the Eastern Conference. We'll have a different podcast where we go more in depth with the Western Conference. But yeah, I mean, let's get right into it. So, let's start off with we're gonna go by division. That's the way we're gonna do it today. Start with the Atlantic Division. The Boston Celtics had a couple interesting moves. They were rumored to have a lot more moves than they ended up actually having. We'll start with the Tristan Thompson. They acquired the center from Cleveland. They were in dire need of a center, but it looked like they were going to go towards the Gordon Hayward swap for Miles Turner for a long time, but that didn't end up happening. What do you think about the Tristan Thompson move?
I like the signing for the Celtics. I think they should have gone for something better overall. I really liked the prospect of them getting a Miles Turner or a Steven Adams this year because I think that would have been the biggest improvement to their team, as we've talked about. They really were in need of a center, as we saw. Bam Adebayo just obliterated them in that playoff series. So that was their biggest need, and they kind of filled it with Tristan Thompson. I mean, people forget that Thompson's only 29 years old. Like, he's a lot younger than people think. He's like younger than like Curry, Durant, and those guys.
Oh wow, yeah.
So he's got plenty of years left in the league, and so I like the signing, but I just think they could have gone for more. But I mean, he's very good in the pick and roll, defensively. So I think that was one of their biggest problems against the Heat, and I think he should fill that need, at least much better than Enes Kanter or Daniel Tice could.
Yeah, I mean, Enes Kanter's not really a guy known for rebounding or defense. He's an offensive kind of center. So for them to have a bigger body down there, who he's been a 10-10 guy his whole career. He's played next to Kevin Love a lot of it. He was on the championship team with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. So to bring that into Cleveland, have a good defensive anchor. I don't think it's as much of an upgrade as we were hoping they would get. I was kind of hoping that they would possibly look into that Steven Adams in the 14 trade. But I think it's a solid acquisition for them.
As a Sixers fan, I'm thrilled about it because they could have done a lot more and made that team a lot better, which is already a pretty scary team. So I'm happy that they didn't make any blockbuster moves, keeping a lot of the same roster from last year.
Exactly, which I think is not the worst thing. I think Danny Ainge was probably looking to do that because they did make it far last year. I mean, keep developing Jason Tatum. They just recently drafted Aaron Nesmith, which I think is a great 3-and-D player for that team.
Yes. I love Nesmith. I think he's definitely the best shooter in the draft, at least in my opinion. And you can never have too many shooters, especially with the kind of brand of small ball that the Celtics played last year.
Yeah.
Obviously not to the extent that the Rockets did it, but I mean, playing Jason Tatum at the 4 and then a lot of Tice at the 5, they were a lot smaller than most other teams, and they ran 4 wings normally with only one man inside. And so I think Aaron Nesmith could really help with that floor spacing that they had last year.
Yeah. Also coming off the bench with a player like Marcus Smart. I mean, those are very two good defensive wing players that I could
Yep.
see making an impact off the bench. And then they even
Yeah.
got out and signed
Although,
their backup point guard, which is Jeff
mhm,
Teague. And now that I believe Kemba Walker is out now until January, I saw a report where like he won't start the season with the team, and so signing Jeff Teague might end up being their starting point guard for the first month of the season.
exactly. Teague is the kind of veteran point guard you want on your team.
Mhm.
He's bounced around a little bit recently with the Hawks and the Timberwolves, but I think this is a good place for him just because he's the type of guy that will fit well on a contending team because he's got the point guard IQ and he's got the experience. And especially with the Celtics, I think that's a really good fit for him. And I think that's good for the Celtics because one of their biggest needs was backup point guard. Brad Wanamaker was decent, but not what you're really looking for if you're trying to make a championship run. So I think Teague
Exactly.
was probably their best signing. I think I really like that one.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And then I'm excited to see what they do in their starting lineup now that Gordon Hayward's out. I'd like to see if they moved Jalen Brown maybe to the three, Marcus Smart as up to the
Mhm.
starters. They have a lot of different
Yeah,
options they could do.
yeah. No, I think that's probably what they're going to end up doing because we saw in the playoffs a lot they were starting Smart when Hayward was
Yeah.
out, which I thought was fit really well. I mean, the Celtics looked really good in the playoffs last year. I know they ended up losing to the Heat in the conference championship, but I think they definitely outplayed the Raptors in the second round
Mhm.
in that series, went 7 games, and I watched them just destroy the Sixers in the first round. So I think they had a very, very successful playoffs last year, and that was the lineup they were running with. I think Marcus Smart was probably their second most important player on the floor after Jason
Yeah.
Tatum. So I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed as a starter with the absence of Hayward this year.
Exactly. No, they've got an interesting lineup coming up, and they've been
Mhm.
making noise in the East for the past couple of years since they really, since they drafted really well, luckily, in
Yep.
Jason Tatum and Jalen
Yep.
Brown. So I'm excited to see what they do next year.
Yep.
Um,
Overall, I given a grade to every single team for
Perfect.
their
I love this.
offseason outlook, and I'm giving a C for the Celtics.
Okay.
C for the C's, just because I think they did well with getting Thompson and Teague, and I like those
Hmm.
moves. But I think there's just a lot more they could have done. They had a huge piece in Gordon Hayward that they could have moved to improve their team a lot, and they ended up
Yeah.
losing him for nothing, which I think
Exactly.
was a huge mistake on their part because they could have really gotten a solid center more solid than Thompson to fill in that five role, and they didn't really capitalize on that opportunity. So I think I don't think they improved a lot, but I don't think they got worse. So I'm keeping them at
Exactly.
around a C.
Yeah, I mean, there was all the rumors where with Gavin Hayward about going to Indiana, and then Danny
Mm,
Danny Ainge apparently reportedly said that he wanted not only Miles Turner, but he wanted them to throw in Victor Oladipo as well. And I think that's where the
yeah,
Pacers were like,
we're like nope,
nah,
no
probably
thank
not,
you.
not yet,
Yeah,
exactly. So moving on to the next team, we have the Brooklyn Nets, who still there's a lot
it's a
of
good one.
potential for them to make a move. I think everyone is still expecting them to make a
Yeah,
move, but as of right now, the only moves that they really have made are they signed Joe Harris to, I believe it was a 4 year, $75 million deal.
yep,
They also then included in a three-team trade. They traded for Landry Shamet, and then they also picked up Jeff Green.
yep. I've been holding my breath all off season, waiting for the Brooklyn Nets to do something.
Yep.
Like they have such a great opportunity here with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, and
Mhm.
just the team they have around those two doesn't fit them right now. You as much as I love Karis LeVert, you don't need Karis LeVert on that team.
He's
He
ball
doesn't
dominant
provide you
shooting
any
guard.
yeah, he doesn't provide you anything that Kyrie and Durant doesn't provide you. Like you
Mhm.
need pieces that fit, role players that fit around those two, or even go a third superstar. I know everyone was talking about James Harden. That's seeming less and less likely as the offseason goes on. But I mean, I was very underwhelmed. They overpaid Joe Harris. I think
Extremely.
they really should have. I think they really should have moved Levert and Dinwiddie, or at least one of the two, for like just something that they need, like a piece, like a
Yeah.
glue guy that
I
really
was surprised
ties
when
that whole offense together.
Yeah, I was really surprised when the Drew Holiday move ended up happening from Milwaukee because it seemed like Drew Holiday was
Mhm.
almost the perfect fit next to Kyrie and KD, where they needed a defensive
Yeah.
anchor, someone who can guard, the
Yep.
top three positions for the teams. And they
Yep.
never made the move. So, it's
Yeah.
weird. Dinwiddie's still off the bench for them. He's a ball dominant kind of player. Levert's going to be
Yeah.
as of right now, he's the starting two ball dominant player. They still have the two centers in Jarrett Allen and DeAndre Jordan, who you can't play one at the four because they're both paint
No.
beasts, rim
No.
protectors.
They're this. They're like the same player,
Exactly. So
and
it's just
that's not a good
it's
thing.
very interesting. to see that they haven't made I'm still expecting them to make a move. I hope they do. But
Mhm.
there's not many
Yeah,
options out there now.
this offseason, like the Nets are the team I most wanted to see make a move because the
Mhm.
Kyrie Durant pairing is one that I'm thrilled to watch. Like just as a basketball
Yeah,
fan, like you can't not be excited to see Kyrie and Durant play on the same court together. And I just really think that the Nets could have done something. I mean, they still might, but I think they need to trade Levert. I don't think that's a good fit with the team that they've got right now, especially if they're looking to make a championship run. I mean, you can't have too many cooks in the kitchen, and I just think Levert's going to get lost in that offense. As much as I
yes.
think he's a great player and I think he's a young stud, but I just don't think it's going to fit.
Yeah. No, they've still got the pieces to make moves though. They still have the time,
Hmm.
obviously. The season,
Hmm.
the training camp I believe is starting today. And so,
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of crazy to think, but so the season starts on what,
Uh,
December 22nd. And there was the rumors where the Rockets were saying that he doesn't the general manager doesn't feel pressure to make a move with Westbrook or Harden yet, where he's going to wait it out, maybe wait until even the trade deadline, see how it's working. But I could definitely see them making a move sometime and during the season.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how it starts too. Like if they start out and they just start out with Durant averaging 30 points per game and they win a bunch of games, I'm probably not going to make a move. But if they start out a little slow, maybe don't get off to the start that I mean, many people are expecting them to be a top 2 or 3 seed in the East. So if they don't really live up to that right out of the gate, I think I could see them making some moves by the trade deadline. But
Exactly. So, mhm.
overall, I think I'm giving the Nets a C minus. Um,
Ooh,
just I know they didn't really lose anything, and I know they re-signed Harris. They got a couple other pieces, but I just think everyone was expecting more from them, especially me. So I'm a
yeah,
little disappointed in the Nets free agency. Obviously, not a huge loss without anything, but I don't think they gained anything either.
yeah, exactly. I completely agree with that. But they still have the pieces, and let's see what happens during the season. Moving on to the next New York team, the New York Knicks, who look to be trying to go now in a winning direction by drafting Obi Toppin, signing good role players around them for cheap contracts, including Alec Burks, Nerlens
Yep.
Noel, and Austin Rivers. What do you
Yep.
think about them moving in possibly a new direction?
I'm giving the Knicks a B plus, and this that
Oh,
might seem crazy, but I really like the Knicks offseason. Other than the Obi Toppin drafting,
hmm,
I think that was one of the worst picks in the lottery, just because I think Toppin is obviously a good talent, and dropping the 8, I know the Knicks wanted to snatch him up, but Tyrese Halliburton was on the board, and the
yeah,
Knicks need a point guard more than anything. I know they signed Austin Rivers to try to fill that role,
that's
but they
not the
need like
answer.
a point guard of the future. They need a point guard of the future. They need someone to carry them. And Obi Toppin's not going to be that guy. Obi Toppin would be a great like starter role player kind of guy, third, fourth option on a team, but you can't have him come in and expect to turn a whole franchise around. I just don't think that's realistic. So I think I think that was a really a miss by drafting him over Halliburton. Otherwise, I really like their free agency so far. I know you mentioned Burks, Rivers, and
Hmm.
Nerlens Noel. They also signed. They're focusing on going young, which I really like. They got rid of the extraneous noise. They got rid of Bobby Portis. Hopefully, they
Yes.
move Julius Randle out of the point forward position they had him playing last year because that
Yeah,
was
I
a
don't know what
disaster.
that was. Yeah, that's not Julius Randle. I don't know.
No,
Yeah,
no, that yeah. I mean, that was tough to watch. The Knicks last season were a disaster, and anything is a way up for the Knicks at this point. And I think they didn't make any big free agent signs. They didn't waste money on Westbrook or Chris Paul, which I think a lot of people were expecting them to. So
yeah.
maybe the reason I have them just having such a high grade is because they just didn't screw up like normal. Like they didn't have a
Hmm.
horrible off season like we're used to them having. So maybe I'm a little bit more lenient towards them. But they seem to be going young. They just got to focus on RJ and Mitch because those are the two cornerstones of their future right now.
Yeah, I like if they end up moving Julius Randle. I do like the fit of Obi Toppin, trying to look on the positive side. I do like the fit of Obi Toppin next to Mitchell Robinson. He's just another rebounding kind of guy. He has a decent mid
Yep.
range where Mitchell Robinson is just strictly paint. I mean, he beat Wilt
Yeah.
Chamberlain's best field goal percentage in, I believe,
Yeah.
NBA history last season. But
Yep.
they played him. He only started like 9 games last year, and I'm over here like Mitchell Robinson is probably your second best player on that team last year, and he's coming off the bench for you guys. I don't understand that.
I think he was their best player last year.
Yeah,
I
I
think
would say
Julius.
him and
I think Julius
RJ.
Randle. Yeah, Julius Randle hurt them more than helped them, and RJ hadn't quite developed yet. Hopefully, he makes a bigger jump this year. I know he averaged. I think he was robbed all rookie second team, even first team. He averaged 14 points per game and wasn't listed as one of the top 10 rookies in the league, which I thought was ridiculous
Oh wow, I didn't
because
even. Yeah,
he
crazy.
was yeah, he didn't make all rookie first or second team last year,
Yeah,
which I thought that was shocking because to me he was a
yeah,
top 5 rookie last year. He just happened to be stuck playing on the worst program in the league.
exactly.
But
Yeah,
yeah, like I
their
said,
free agency pickups are pretty solid.
yeah, yeah. Ooh, we got a comment here.
Yeah.
Obviously, contenders down the stretch need to go out and sign key role players, make a playoff run. But what do you guys think about a team making a splash signing on a guy like Sheldon Mack? Sheldon Mack, my University of Miami. That's a good one. Um,
Enzo, loving Miami. Gotta thank you,
yeah,
Enzo.
my Miami fan right there. Thank you. Yeah. Back to the Knicks. Overall, B plus. They're not going to make a splash this year. They're probably going to have one of the 3 or 4 worst records in the league, but they're going in the right direction for once.
Exactly, yeah, and I do think that they missed on Tyrese Halliburton, but hopefully they're maybe looking for a point guard next year because I know there's some big time point guards in towards the upper part of the draft. You know,
Cade
big time
Cunningham.
Cade Cunningham. That's the main name I was thinking
Cade
of.
Cunningham's
So
the one.
we'll see. I think the Knicks are hoping to
6'8"
fall
point
for
guard.
them. But yeah,
Yeah.
we shall see what the Knicks do. Moving on to the team that's sitting right behind you, your favorite team, the Philadelphia 76ers, making some, interesting moves this offseason. They traded Josh Richardson pretty much straight up for Seth Curry, signing Dwight Howard to a pretty
Mhm.
much minimum deal, which I think we'll get into
Yeah.
that. That's a steal. They also traded for Tony Bradley, another backup center coming from Utah, and drafting Tyrese
Yep.
Maxey out of Kentucky. Pretty solid, confident shooter. And so I'll leave the floor to you as a Philadelphia 76er fan.
I'm giving the Sixers an A. I
Okay.
liked the Sixers offseason. I really do. As a Sixers fan, I know a lot of us have been praising Daryl Morey as the savior,
Hmm.
which obviously couldn't go much further down than what Elton Brand did to the franchise this past year in free agency
Yeah.
with the Tobias Harris and Al Horford
Al
signings
Horford,
and
which I forgot to
losing Jimmy
mention.
Butler.
Yeah, Al Horford getting
Gone.
moved for Danny Green.
That was the most important thing. I think that
Hmm.
alone is big enough to get a good grade for the Sixers because their biggest object this offseason was to get rid of Al Horford's contract. That way they have enough room to sign another big free agent either this year or next year. They weren't able to do it this year, which I'm fine with because it gives it a lot more time for Ben and Joel to develop.
Hmm.
Because I mean that's what you got to focus on. I think they are really putting an emphasis on making sure Simmons and Embiid work, and that is the biggest point of emphasis for them this season. And I think that's what they seem to be going towards. They're
Hmm.
surrounding them with shooters. Seth Curry, I love the Seth Curry trade
Yeah.
because you're getting rid of Josh Richardson, who was a good defender, good 3-and-D guy, but Curry's just a lights out shooter. And we saw with JJ Redick 2 seasons ago on the Sixers, pure shooters, especially in the pick and roll with Embiid, help us our team a lot more than a 3-and-D guy like Richardson, where we're already one of the best defensive teams in the league. So I really like the Sixers going out and grabbing Curry. I really like them moving Horford. And I also really like the Tyrese Maxey drafting. I was really, really thrilled about them drafting Maxey all the way at 21. I think he's going to come right off the bench and provide some scoring for us. And I think he could develop to be a star someday. The Kentucky guys have had a lot of success lately in
Yeah.
the
Tyler
in the
Hero.
league. Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Jamal Murray. I mean, all these guys
Yeah.
who have mid round guys who have just come out and been balling. So I don't know. I really like the Sixers offseason. I gave them an A, first A yet, and one of the only few A's of the Eastern Conference. But what do you think?
I think surrounding Ben Simmons with the shooting is I think that's the number one priority for any team that has a player like Ben Simmons because he is your point
Yeah,
guard. I did not like I think both of us can agree we did not like the transition of him to power forward in the bubble at all. He is
no,
a
not at all.
preliminary point guard. He's one of the top playmakers in the league. I mean, he can get a triple double pretty much any night he really wants to. And so you put two wing players around him like Danny Green and Seth Curry now to start. As much as we hate Danny Green for his finals performance, he's still a decent caliber
Still,
shooter, half decent
yeah,
defender. He's a player that fits well with what the Sixers needed, and also this is an underrated thing. I really am a big fan of Doc Rivers being the new coach of the 76ers for the pure reason that you signed Tobias Harris for an incredibly large contract. And Tobias Harris's best season was the half season when he was on the Clippers under Doc Rivers running the power forward. So now you move Al Horford out. Tobias Harris comes into the four, and he's under Doc Rivers, who he was under when he was had his best part of his career. So I think the Sixers, I see them as a top 4 seed. They were the 6th seed last year, underwhelming performance, but
Yeah.
I could see them as a top 4, possibly up to top 2 regular season team. I don't know how they match up now against the Bostons, the Nets, and the Bucks, but I could see them making some noise is if Ben Simmons can maybe develop a little bit of a jump shot.
Absolutely. That's the most key thing right now, too. Do you think the acquisitions of Seth Curry and Danny Green is enough for perimeter presence because they've had some trouble with defenses, keying and low down on Ben Simmons? Both are good. Yeah. Thank you, Enzo, for that comment. I do. I think that is enough as a perimeter presence because when you were looking at the team 2 years ago that was Game 7 lost to the Raptors, and if they win that game, I was a firm believer that they were going to go on to win the championship. I don't think the Bucks or the Warriors were good enough to stop that team, as they weren't good enough to stop the Raptors. And I think if you look at that team, JJ Redick was obviously our number one shooter, and Jimmy Butler back then shot more threes than he did this season. I know, as we saw in the postseason, he went back to shooting threes again, and Jimmy Butler was shooting threes well. Harris was shooting threes well, and I think if you look at Curry, Curry's just as good. Curry's just as good of a shooter as Redick, if you ask me. He's right up there. I mean, one of the highest 3-point percentages in NBA history. Curry's got one of the highest 3-point percentages in NBA history. So I think that's a great signing. And yeah, I know you said everyone likes to clown on Danny Green, but he still will give you at least 35% from 3, if not 40% if he's shooting well. He's shown that he can shoot that before. And he provides a bit of a defensive presence, I know, as he's getting older. Maybe not as quick as he was back in the San Antonio days. But yeah, I know with Ben and Joel clogging up the lanes, I think having Curry, Green, Harris, and Matisse Thybulle was actually a really good 3-point shooter.
Yeah, getting a lot better.
Something that he's developing a lot, as you saw by the end of the season last year. Shake Milton off the bench can hit threes pretty well. You got Furkan Korkmaz still. So, I mean, if you just look at all their pieces besides Ben and Embiid, they can all shoot threes. And they're all pretty good at it.
Embiid loves chucking them up too.
Oh, yeah, he shouldn't be. Embiid's got no business being on the 3-point line. That's something I've said for a while.
Yeah, I like the Philly. I like them. I said, they're locked for a playoff team. It's just how far they can go in the postseason. And then one of their biggest competitors. Oh, continue.
Oh no, I was just gonna say for the Sixers, you're looking this year. If you don't win a playoff series, that's when you blow it up. You got to win at least one playoff series this year, and then compete in the second one because you're not going to be satisfied with another second round exit at this point. So
the city of Philadelphia probably will not be too happy, and the Daryl Morey is known for waiting it out with a couple superstars, and then if it doesn't work out, bombing them away. So moving on to another Eastern, one of probably their biggest competitor is the Toronto Raptors. A team that didn't make a lot of moves this offseason. They obviously signed Fred VanVleet to another big time contract, and then they signed Aaron Baines to be a backup center. I believe they re-signed Chris Boucher. Not too many moves, but what do you think? Do you think they did enough to get over the hump?
Well, no, I'm interested. You said Baines is their backup center. Who do you think is going to start this year? Boucher? They lost.
Serge they did lose Serge Ibaka. Oh yeah, I forgot about the Serge. So I would probably say I'd probably say Aaron Baines is the starter. Boucher comes off the bench.
Boucher off the bench. Yeah,
I trust whatever Nick Nurse does.
Yeah, no, you can't bet against Nick Nurse, and the Raptors are going to be a playoff team again. But I think we're going to see a lot of regressions from them this year. Teams have figured, at least as we saw in the playoffs, teams figured out Siakam's not that difficult to guard. I've considered him to be this past year the most vastly overrated player in the league. He's not difficult to stop on offense, and he's not the greatest rebounder either. He's a pretty good defender, as we saw. He did a good job in the post, especially in the first round. But I don't think he's good enough to lead a team. Kyle Lowry is getting a little older. I think VanVleet was signed for a little too much money. I know at this point,
the way
he's playing, if they wanted to keep him, they needed to give him that money. but I wonder if that's the best way they could have spent their money. The way I see it right now, the team that they have constructed is not good enough to do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at their team this year, and they overachieved. They vastly overachieved, and the league's only gotten better. The Eastern Conference is only getting stronger. The Sixers are improving, Celtics are improving, Nets are improving, Bucks are improving. The Heat are improving. The Raptors aren't getting any better. So that's like I gave them a C minus. I don't think they did enough this offseason to really
Mhm.
make them to separate themselves. I think they're just getting lost in the mix.
Yeah, I probably would have even given them maybe less than that because obviously I think to keep Freddie around was huge because Kyle Lowry is getting older. They did need a point guard. Obviously they'll probably still run Freddie at the two this season, but
Yeah,
I think Norman Powell is one of the most underrated players in the league. He can make a big jump and possibly start, bring Freddie off the bench in some games, some scenarios. But I don't think you can win with having Pascal Siakam as your number one option, and so that's why I think the Sixers almost maybe made a jump to get better than a team like the Raptors. Like over
yeah,
in playoff contention, I would probably take the Sixers over the Raptors as of right
I
now.
would as well.
But at the same time, I don't know how much I'm going to bet against Nick Nurse. He seems to be one of the geniuses of the NBA right
Oh
now,
yeah,
and he seems like
oh yeah,
he knows
definitely.
his stuff. So they didn't make too many moves. They're pretty much running it back with the same lineup. I was kind of
Yeah,
hoping that they'd make a DeMar DeRozan move. Just for old time's sake, I think it was maybe a good fit. But
yeah,
that didn't.
I know. I think that I think they should. I said before the off season, and I still think they should have done this. I think they should have looked to move Kyle Lowry because I think Van Vliet's natural position is at point guard. I mean,
Oh, without a
he's
doubt.
6'1". He's
Hmm.
6'1". You don't find many 6'1" shooting guards. He fits better at point guard. He's a good distributor as well. He
Hmm.
guards point guards normally defensively. So I just think they should have looked to move a veteran Lowry, who's probably not going to. I think Lowry was great this past season. He had one of his best seasons to date, but he's not getting younger. He's not getting any better. And again, the Raptors don't have enough to win a championship right now, and I don't think that's very disputed. I think they should have looked to run it back, develop Van Vliet and Siakam as their
Hmm.
top two options. And like you said, start Norman Powell at the two with Van Vliet at the one. But honestly, with Lowry coming back, I think it's fine for them because I think he's such an important part of that program. I think
Yeah,
he's like
he's
the
been
heart of
there
that
for so
city.
long.
He's the heart of that city. So it doesn't hurt them that he's back, but I don't think it really helps them that much.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that will conclude the or what you gave them a C minus. So
C minus. Yep.
yeah, the Atlantic Division.
So yeah,
It's they have roughly four playoff teams in there, and obviously the Knicks probably
yeah,
won't be a playoff team, but that's a tough division. They've got you got the Celtics, Nets, Sixers, and Raptors all competing for the probably the top
yep.
four seeds. So it'll be exciting to watch that division.
And what I like about that too, as a Sixers fan, is I think out of those four competing teams, the Sixers are the only one who had a really good offseason.
Hmm.
The Nets, I mean, they get Durant back, but like I said, they didn't really do much to build around Durant and Kyrie. The Celtics didn't improve at all, really. They
Hmm.
lost one of their top scorers, and they only gained an average center. And like we said, the Raptors lost both of their championship caliber centers, Serge
Hmm.
and Gasol, and only replaced them with Aaron Baines. So I think the Sixers are really the only team out of that group that improved drastically this season. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out this year.
Yeah. So moving on to the Central Division, and starting with probably my most hated team in the NBA right now, which is the Chicago Bulls. Um, I was vastly disappointed when I heard about when I was sitting there. I was sitting there at my dad's house watching the draft. My Warriors just selected James Wiseman, and there were rumors that the Warriors were going to trade down to 4 for Wendell Carter and 4 for 2, and they decided Zach and I in our draft predictions video, we had a clear number 4 with Denny Avdija. We thought he was the perfect fit next to Zach LaVine, Kobe White, Laurie Markkinen, and they went with a backup small forward for a college team who only averaged 9 points per game in college, and Patrick Williams. And that's really the only offseason move they made besides also letting Chris Dunn walk. I'm not happy with this selection.
I gave the Bulls a D, um, and I honestly think it could have been lower too.
Yeah.
I Patrick Williams. I watched him play in college multiple times in person and on TV. I've never been wowed with his skill set. I don't think he translates that well to the NBA. I know he's got the athleticism, but there's no part of his game that really stands out as like, oh, that's how he's going to contribute to the Bulls. Like
Hmm.
he needs to work on everything. Like he's a project. That's how I
Hmm.
see Patrick Williams. One of the youngest players in the draft, but he's gonna take years to develop. If he develops into a star, which I don't even know if he's going to, um, and they didn't really make any other acquisitions. I mean, I was talking to some of my friends that I thought the Bulls this year were poised to make enough moves to jump into the postseason because I really like Levine's development and
I
Markkanen's
agree.
development, and
Yeah.
I thought the coach hiring of Billy Donovan was going to
Yeah.
push them over the hump, but then they did nothing, and all they all they did was get Garrett Temple and Patrick Williams,
Yeah.
and Temple's a decent off the bench guy, but he's not going to be a game changer for you. And I think Patrick Williams was a horrible selection at number 4. So I mean, you got a team that was on the rise, looking up, and you just didn't do anything to help them out. So I give them a D, which is honestly kind of lenient.
Yeah. No, the Patrick Williams was confusing to me because I feel like his maximum potential is almost like Otto Porter. Like I don't really see him ever
Yeah,
being like that better of a player than Otto Porter. And they have Chandler Hutchinson too, who's an offensive minded small forward who they're developing. And they just have all these guys who they're projects. They keep Kobe White as much as he kind of is a project because he just shoots, he's a shooter. He's not really
I
great
love
defense.
Kobe White.
Yes, I love him too. I think I'm kind of, I'm almost glad that they didn't take a point guard. I was really hoping, obviously, they'd fill that small forward role because I was hoping they wouldn't reach on like a Tyrese Halliburton because I do like Kobe
Yeah,
White being the one of that team. But I think they could have even done a move where they trade back and still select Patrick Williams and get more assets to help them in free agency or maybe even draft another player, but they didn't.
yeah, I agree with you on that. And I mean, looking at Patrick Williams again, this guy was never started a college game in the ACC. He was a sixth man, and I've heard people argue like, "Oh, Devin Booker never started a college game either," and that's also because Devin Booker played on one of the best college teams of
Kentucky.
all time, the 2015 Kentucky team that didn't lose a
Uh,
game until
uh,
the Final Four. Like they had 7 guys drafted to the NBA. Of course, he came off the bench, but
mhm,
Patrick Williams, you have Florida State really only had two, three. They had 2 NBA caliber players and another guy who was really good in college.
mhm.
But I don't know. I just don't see it. I know a lot of analysts really like him, and I've watched him play a lot, and I just don't see it.
Yeah, it's very interesting moves by the Chicago Bulls, but I'm hoping Billy Donovan can help develop that young core that they have. Moving on
Yeah.
to another extremely young team, which is the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Mhm.
When they originally made their pick at 5, which was Isaac Okoro, I thought they reached, but then I looked into the fit more, and I actually started to really like the fit next to Sexton, Garland, and then they
We
also re-signed they re-signed Dellavedova, which Dellavedova is he's one of the most interesting players that Cleveland's ever had. They replaced Tristan Thompson, who obviously you talked about him, with JaVale McGee. I don't really think matters that much, but let's talk more into Isaac Okoro. What are your thoughts on it?
You say you did some research. You mean you texted me complaining about the pick, and then I had to talk you into why it was a great selection
That
for the
yeah,
Cavs.
that
Yeah,
is true.
I really I know both of us had a Coro going a bit lower in the draft.
Yeah,
I think I had him at like 10, and you had him like eight
yeah,
or
I had him
nine or
at
something like
9
that.
to Wizards, but
Yeah, yeah. I really like the pick because I think it's such a good fit with the Cavs because what they've drafted the last 2 years is Sexton and Garland, 2 offensive-minded point guards that score. Like that's all
mhm,
Sexton and Garland are on the floor to do. They score the basketball, um, and neither one's a great playmaker, neither one's a great defender. And Okoro comes in and I think he's the best glue guy in the draft. Like Okoro's not going to come out and be a superstar for your team, but he could be an Andre Iguodala kind of guy who is the best glue guy in the league because he's a
yeah,
great defender, he's a great ball handler, he's a great distributor. His jump shot could use a little bit of work, but I mean they've got the scorers on that team, especially if Sexton and Garland pan out. I thought it was a
yeah.
really good pick. Like I was the more I looked into it, the more I really liked it.
Yeah, I'm shocked that both Okoro and Patrick Williams went before Denny Avdia. I thought Denny Avdia was the clear like number one forward, small
Yeah,
forward, power forward in the draft. But looking more
yeah,
into the fit of it, I don't think they got it wrong. They've had as long as
yeah.
Garland can develop to be somewhat of a playmaker, and
Yeah,
Sexton can still. I think he's been averaging what 20 points per game in the past
yeah.
couple of seasons.
He he
He's decent.
he quietly came out and dropped 20 points per game last year without
Yeah.
anyone really noticing.
Yeah, and an underrated thing was where Drummond resigned. I think they kind of needed. I think that's huge for them to if they want to make a playoff
Yeah,
push, which I think obviously they might want to try. As well, if Garland can come out and do a lot better than he did, or a little more efficient than he did last year, and maybe Okoro pans out to right off the bat be that 3-and-D glue guy, I could see the Cavs competing for an 8, 9, 10 seed.
I don't
Maybe.
think the Cavs are going to be looking at the playoffs this year. I think they're going to be right down there with the Knicks, and we'll get to them with the Pistons as well. I
Yeah,
think
they're the
that's
next
going to
team
be your
up.
bottom. I think that's going to be your bottom three in the East this year, and not because the Cavs didn't make enough moves. I just think. I mean, okay, I gave them a B minus
Okay.
for the offseason. I think I like the Okoro move, but I really don't think they did much else to really solidify themselves.
Yeah.
Resigning Drummond's fine. I don't really think it adds much to the team because I'm not the biggest Drummond guy. I think they really should
Yeah.
have looked to move Kevin Love. I think that's the biggest place where I think
Yeah.
if they had traded Kevin Love for some more assets, I would have given them a higher grade, possibly a B plus or even into the A range. But that's the one piece you really got rid of. Kevin Love's not going to help a team like the Cavs right now. He should be on a contending team.
Hmm.
And I think they could. And with his contract, I know that they'd have to give up assets to get rid of him too. But I still think they could have gotten a little bit for him. And overall, not thrilled that they didn't decide to move him.
Yeah, Cavs had an interesting offseason. I can't really tell. Like what you said, I feel like they could either be that 8 seed or they could either be bottom of
Yeah,
there's a big
yeah,
range for the Cleveland Cavaliers this season.
yeah.
And you
I,
oh,
I was gonna say I still think they got a little bit of a ways to go.
mhm,
Overall, I'm just happy they didn't draft a point guard because I think
me too.
they got to really develop on Garland and Sexton,
Yeah.
and instead of drafting another scoring point guard like a Killian Hayes.
Yes, exactly. So moving on to the team that did draft Killian Hayes, which I think was a perfect fit for them, the Detroit Pistons.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think
Yep.
they drafted well. They drafted Killian Hayes and Sadiq Bey, who I said was one of the highest IQ players in the draft, and I
Mm-hmm.
still think that right now. But
Mm-hmm.
they followed that up by having an interesting free agency by signing I would say overpaying for Jeremy Grant, overpaying for Mason Plumlee. DeLon Wright's a glue guy. I've always said that. I've been a big DeLon Wright fan, but I don't know why the Pistons would go for him. And then signing another offensive minded center and Jahlil Okafor, all just to replace Christian Wood. The Pistons are weird.
This is the hardest one to grade because I think the Pistons arguably had the best draft. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
Killian Hayes. I'm huge on Killian Hayes. He was my number 2
Yep.
guy in the draft, only behind LaMelo. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he has all the tools to be an absolute just stud point guard,
Yeah.
25 point per game type of player, can carry a team to the playoffs. I think that could be
D'Angelo
Killian
Russell.
Hayes. Probably not
Sorry.
D'Angelo Russell, right? My comparison. I love Killian Hayes. And I really like Sadiq Bey too. And very intelligent player, a really good wing, can score, can defend. I thought that was also a great pickup. I think they reached a little bit on Isaiah Stewart. He's more your traditional center, which I'm not as big on. But overall, I think the Killian and the Bay draft picks can cancel that one out. And then you look at their free agency, and I think you could argue they had the worst free agency. They they did nothing to help their
Beneficial.
roster.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a team that you should be focusing on young guys and developing them, guys like Killian Hayes, and making them better. Like that's what
Yeah.
you should be focusing on. Because the team, they're not going to make the playoffs. Like I hate to break it, Pistons fans, you're not going to make the playoffs with what you got right now. So I don't know why. Why? I mean, they would need Blake Griffin to return back to All NBA form, and they would need a huge jump from Jeremy Grant.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
I
only
guess
way.
technically Derrick Rose is still on the roster, and they'd want him to go back to MVP Derrick Rose, but they really need to move Derrick Rose. Let me put that out there first and foremost. But
Yeah, no,
they're
there's
just
no
weird. They're a
reason
weird team
Rose and Blake should still be on that team. I mean,
without a
these
doubt.
are two aging stars. They're both 30 plus now. They're both on the decline.
Yeah,
Although Rose, I don't know, he's actually only seemed to get better in recent years.
I
But I
know.
mean, these are guys who are on the decline. These are guys that you want to ship off to teams who are contending because you're rebuilding and you don't need a Blake Griffin. You don't need a Derrick Rose. Like especially with Killian Hayes coming in.
Love
You're gonna
it.
have to move Derrick Rose off the ball. Then because I think Killian Hayes is a point guard, so that means you're gonna have to move Derrick
Yes.
Rose off the ball or bring Killian or Rose off the bench, and I don't like either of that. So
Nope.
I can't believe they didn't trade Derrick Rose or Blake Griffin, and they brought in a bunch. Like, what is Jahlil Okafor and Mason Plumlee gonna do to help your team, especially when you already drafted Isaiah Stewart? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand the logic behind some of these moves. Especially overpaying Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant is a great like third option, fourth option, because he's a fantastic
Yeah.
defender and
Just a glue
he's another
guy.
one of the best glue guys in the league. And we saw that
Yeah.
with the Nuggets. That he was a huge reason for their success against the Clippers. So why are you overpaying a glue guy that much? He's not going to have any more impact that, like, say, Draymond Green had on the Warriors this past year, unless he truly develops into a superstar, which I don't think he's ever
He's
going to do.
also he's also a power forward, and you still have technically Blake Griffin. I don't
Yeah,
see Jeremy Grant running the small forward position that much because he's too. I mean, maybe like I
you don't.
guess he could transition, but I don't know. I
You
don't
miss
like
out
the
on a lot
fit.
of shooting. You miss out on a lot of
Yeah.
shooting by moving him to small forward because he's not a great 3-point shooter. So yeah, overall, I gave the Pistons a D, and that is only because of their draft pick of Killian Hayes. Like, if they didn't draft Hayes, they would be an F because I think they had a pathetic free agency. I don't think they did any of the right moves they needed to, and I just think they just cluttered. They overpaid guys. They cluttered their roster, especially their front court, and they didn't ship out the guys that they needed to. So
Yeah. No, the Pistons
they're gonna
definitely.
be right there.
They're gonna be bottom of the
But
tier, bottom of the East, definitely. And
yeah.
then the next team up is the Indiana Pacers, where they
Mhm.
really didn't make any moves at all. I mean, they were
I
rumored in
know.
probably the most like one of the biggest offseason teams to move Victor Oladipo, Miles Turner, possibly I didn't really hear much about Brogdon. I think they were going to keep TJ Warren because of his bubble performance, and then they just did nothing.
This
Like,
was like the biggest shocker for me.
yeah,
Like I was expecting the Pacers to go full in, like making deals, getting rid of Turner, getting rid of Oladipo, really building around Brogdon and Sabonis, and then keeping TJ Warren as well. But they kept everyone. They didn't make any they didn't gain anyone big. Like, who did they sign? I know you listed someone there that they signed, right? Or
no,
uh no, they didn't. Yeah,
I
they didn't
didn't
have a
see any
single
signings
signing.
from them.
No, yeah. I mean, they're running back a same team that yeah, they were the 4 seed last year, but the East is only getting better. I think they're
Yeah,
maybe banking on being healthier this year because they dealt with a lot of injuries to
yeah,
Oladipo and Sabonis last year.
yes,
But even with a healthy Oladipo and Sabonis, you would really need Oladipo to return to 2016, 2017 form to make a
yeah,
splash. Like, this is a bottom of the East, bottom of the playoffs Eastern Conference team,
yeah.
like a
The
6 through 8 seed that will get obliterated in the first round by like a Bucks or a
yeah,
Nets or someone like that.
yeah. The only move that I see that they made was they traded TJ Leaf for Jalen LeCue,
TJ Leaf, there you go. That's the one guy I was thinking that they lost. And
and
they
that's
no
it.
longer
Not
have three of
not
the only
enough to
four
even really
TJs.
talk about.
Yeah, they no longer have three of the only four TJs in NBA history.
I remember that. That's a crazy stat. I mean, they drafted Cassius Stanley, who out of Duke, who's a project.
Cassius Stanley
Um, he might be able to turn into something,
project.
but
I mean,
yeah,
he
crazy
was the most
project.
athletic guy. Cassius Stanley was the most athletic guy in the draft. So obviously the potential is there, but he hasn't
But
shown anything resembling like an NBA ready like jump
no,
shot
I
or
don't. I could see them
skill
maybe
set.
making a move still, like the Victor Oladipo fit. Maybe they could do as we talked about with the Karis LeVert, maybe Victor Oladipo swap if the Nets think
Yep.
he could return to a good defensive and offensive like with his potential. But I don't really see them being better than a 6-7 seed.
Yeah. I mean, I gave them the C because they didn't do anything. I mean,
Yeah,
they're bringing back the same team as last year. They didn't improve. They didn't get worse, but everyone else is improving. So I probably could have given them even lower just because I don't think that they're doing what they need to make the jump.
yeah. And then the last team in the Central Division, but arguably the best team in the East, is the Milwaukee Bucks, where they went out, they traded their entire future with their entire future. Let me repeat that for Drew Holiday. They also went to make a deal for Bogdanovic. That fell through like last minute because Bogdan said
Mhm.
no. They signed a decent glue guy in Bryn Forbes to come off the bench and be a shooting guard. They signed a backup point guard in DJ Augustine, and they got rid of Eric Bledsoe. What is I don't.
I with the Bucks, right? I think you got Augustine replacing George Hill, which I like. I
Oh
like that
yes, I forgot
pickup.
about that.
I like Bryn Forbes too. I think he was good on the Spurs, and you can always take Popovich developed players because they're always going to turn out well. That always happens. With the Bucks, I like the Holiday trade more than most.
Sup, Aiden?
um, I I really like the Holiday trade just because I think that's what's going to keep Giannis around. Like their number one goal is to make sure Giannis signs with them next season, and so they're going to do whatever they can to get Giannis to sign. And if they think Drew Holiday is the answer, then I think that was a great trade. And if that's what
Okay.
Giannis wanted, they had to do it.
Yeah, except the only thing that scares me for all Bucks fans out there is the fact that Drew Holiday is on a 1+1 player option right now, and Giannis is technically not under contract still. And you guys just all gave up 5 first-round picks. Well, the 3 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps for Drew Holiday. And say there's the possibility where they keep this team, Giannis does not sign, and next thing you know, they're a second-round exit to the Brooklyn Nets. I'd be a little nervous if I were you guys, Milwaukee, but I would kind of like, they're like a mid tier. I think I didn't like the Bledsoe fit from the start with next to Giannis, so I'm kind of glad that they did end up getting rid of him. Drew Holiday is, I think, a major upgrade. I think everyone can say that. Every star NBA player praises Drew Holiday's defense and says he's one of the best defenders in the league, and he's a solid shooter. I liked Bryn Forbes too. Um, but I don't know if this was really enough to get them over the hump and make them championship contenders.
This is championship or bust for the Bucks this year, no question
Without
about
a
it.
doubt.
Because if they don't, at least they got to make the finals. Like if they don't even make the
Yes.
finals, I mean, this over. Giannis leaves. Holiday probably declines his player option, and then the Bucks are in rebuild for the next 10 years.
Hmm.
So this is championship or bust, like the truest definition of that. And I, you're gonna disagree with this. I gave the Bucks an A- because I think they improved drastically. I think the Drew Holiday is that much of an
Oh,
upgrade over Eric Bledsoe, and you've already got a team that
whoa.
led the best. This was, I mean, you look at people have always been hating on the Bucks this past year.
I
They had the
hated
best
on the
record in the league.
Bucks. I hated
You hated on the Bucks.
when Zach and
I
I would
hated on
go
the
over
Bucks.
our Eastern Conference like rankings, and I had the Bucks at 4, I believe, and
I had
Zach
the,
was
I
like,
mean,
"There's no way," and then they were.
okay, we
Hate to
both
say,
had the
hate to
Heat
see it.
beating the. We both had the Heat beating the Bucks. No, didn't you have the Raptors beating the Bucks?
Yeah, but that's that's
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
besides the point.
That's what I
Hey,
thought.
Raptors
That's
did
what I
better than the
thought.
Bucks did.
That's true. Yeah, by 2 games.
Yeah, technically.
Yeah. No. Anyway, the Bucks. I mean, this is a team that had the best regular season record. I mean, they were comparisons to the 70-win Warriors teams, the 73-win Warriors team. Like people were wondering if they would win
That's
70
funny.
games. You look back at that now and you laugh a little bit. But I mean, this team was very good and they improved. Like Holiday is a huge improvement over Bledsoe. I can't emphasize that enough. So yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at how much teams improved this offseason, the Bucks improved more than almost anyone.
Wow.
Like if they're gonna win a championship, this is the year.
Yeah.
And I think especially if Giannis goes revenge mode, I think people are really sleeping on him. If he takes his game to the next level, which he still can, like if
As
he
the
adds
MVP.
if he adds a mid range or a more reliable 3 point shot, I mean, I know everyone's focusing on the three, but I think if he can get the reliable mid range,
Yeah.
I think he's unstoppable because you can't stop him getting to the rim. So if
No.
he was able to pull up on you and make shots, it's unstoppable. So if he makes a jump, if Holiday does what he does, I mean, this is a top 2 team in the East.
Yeah.
So I, I,
Yeah.
I really like what the
Bucks
Bucks did this
Bucks are gonna be a
offseason.
fun. They're gonna be a fun team to watch next season. Definitely. With the addition of Drew Holiday and everything, we'll see
Yep.
if they can pan out and win the championship. Which I don't think I don't think as of right now I have them in the championship. I'm also really hoping that they don't make it, so then Giannis can come to Golden State. But that's a different topic.
We'll do our predictions for next season on another episode, but I think I've got the Bucks in the top 3 or 4 right now. Like I do like their chances, especially in the East.
Yeah. So moving on to the Southeast Division, who I predict to only really have two to three playoff teams. We'll start with probably the most active team in free agency was the Atlanta Hawks, which I'm hoping you give them a high grade. You know, they signed Bogdan Bogdanovic for the Kings got nothing out of that. They signed Danilo Gallinari, Chris Dunn, and Rondo to be backup point guards, which we'll get into. Oneka Okongwu was their sixth overall pick, and then an underrated signing for both of us, Tony Snell. So, what are your thoughts on the Atlanta Hawks offseason?
This was my only A plus that I gave in the
Yes, I
Eastern
was gonna
Conference,
say
and
you
this is
got to
the
give them
last
an A plus.
actually. This is the last A that I've given. Sixers, Bucks, and Hawks were the only three teams in the A range that I gave out, and I think the Hawks were the biggest winners. Like Bulls, Chicago Bulls, Charlotte Hornets, whatever. Take note. This is how you take a mediocre team and turn them into like a playoff team. Like that's exactly how you do it. You add the pieces that you need to, and around the young guys you want to build around, because people forget also Clint Capella didn't play a game for them last year.
I
So
loved the
they've
addition
got
from Capella.
they've got Clint Capella coming in too. Gallinari, I think, is going to be a great, especially if you put him at the 3 spot. I really like that. I know he's used to playing 4 recently, but he can definitely play
Yeah.
small forward. Like you said, Rondo and Chris Dunn both off the bench. Rondo gives you playmaking. Dunn gives you
Dunn's the
defense.
defense.
So I
They're
like
the
both of those
perfect
signings.
backup for Trae Young, who doesn't play defense. He's like
Yeah,
one of the
exactly,
literal, probably maybe the worst defender in the NBA.
exactly.
I mean, his
I mean,
29 and 10 is good enough to counter his defense, but I think they signed the perfect backup point guards for Trae Young. I was so happy when I saw those pickups.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, you look at just their overall lineup. Starting, you got Trae Young, Bogdanovich, Gallinari, Collins, and
Collins
Capella.
and Capella.
There's no weaknesses there.
No,
And you have a superstar in Trae Young, and you have a second star in John Collins. I mean, John Collins averaged 20 and 10 last year. I think he's
he's
severely
so
underrated.
underrated.
To me, he's the most underrated player in the league. I think John Collins is fantastic. And
Wow.
then you look at their bench. I mean, you've got Rondo now, who's just coming off a championship, probably the third best player on the championship team.
Yeah.
Kevin Huerter, who started the last 2 years in Atlanta. I'm a big Kevin Huerter fan. Um, I think he's going to be great off the bench now with Bogdanovich starting. You got Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter still that can develop.
Yeah.
I mean, there's less risk now that you've got other pieces around them, but high reward. Like either one of those guys could pan out to be a superstar still. And you've got Okongwu too coming in to be the backup big, who's a huge defensive guy. He's going to come in and provide immediately because I mean he's got the athletic upside, the pick and roll defense, which he's always been one
Potential
of
of
his
Bam
specialties.
Adebayo.
Exactly. I love this team. I think the Hawks are going to be a top 6 team in the East around that area.
Okay. I hope so.
Yeah, I really like the Hawks this year, especially if Trae Young makes one more jump to be a superstar, which
Yeah.
you could argue he was a superstar last year, but the defense didn't really help and they didn't win much, so I wouldn't have put him at superstar level. But if they're winning this year, I mean, there's no excuse now. I mean, he's got the team around him. It's time to make a jump to be a top five point guard in the league, top 3 point guard.
Yeah. The only thing that scares me about the team is moving Gallo back to the 3 if they decide to do that. He is getting older, and I don't know if he's able defensively to keep up with other threes, where maybe then John Collins could even slide over if he can develop a better perimeter, maybe, but he's more of a rim protector. So that's where I'm seeing like who's going to guard that 3 position. But you have DeAndre Hunter off the bench, who he was the 4th overall pick for his defense. So I feel like they put maybe at the starters, they don't have a lot of defense, but their bench core, when their defensive lineup, if they decide to create one for like late game situations, I mean, that's a stud. They signed a bunch of studs defensively. So yeah, I agree with your A plus.
If Gallo struggles out the gate, which he showed no signs of doing so last year in OKC, you could always just replace him in the starting lineup with Hunter. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they started Hunter over Gallo to start the year, if they really think that he's the guy that you can develop into a superstar, and then bring Gallo as one. I mean, if Gallo's coming off the bench, that's 6th man of the year potential right there, because he's that good. So yeah, I mean, I can't talk enough about how well the Hawks did in free agency this year. I really like their moves.
Yeah, they finally, they did exactly what you said. They put themselves over the hump of being that mediocre team, which other teams, including the Charlotte Hornets, who are the next team up, are still going to be that mediocre team. You know, they probably had one of the most popular off seasons by drafting LaMelo and then giving Gordon Hayward another $30 million contract. I love the LaMelo pick up. I think, you know, as long as they decide, I hope they move on from Terry Rozier. I think that experiment's over with. They keep LaMelo and Devontae Graham as a backcourt, and Gordon Hayward. You know, they're doing stuff which shows that they want LaMelo to be successful on this team, but that's not enough.
Some people might be surprised by this. I gave the Hornets a B. I don't
That's
think
what I
their
would give
free
them.
agency was I don't know if their free agency was as bad as people have been making it out to be. I know everyone hates on the Gordon Hayward signing, right? I mean,
Yeah,
Hayward joins Kevin Durant and LeBron James as the only two players in NBA history to sign multiple $30 million contracts, which is
yeah.
absurd. Props to Gordon Hayward's agent because you know what you're doing. And
Yeah.
um, I like the signing. I mean, he was basically a fourth option last year in Boston, and he still averaged 18 points per game.
Mhm.
If he's handed the reins of the offense, he could average over 20 points per game again. And people
Yeah.
forget, like, the Hornets going into last season was everyone's pick to be the worst team in the league. Like, that was like almost undisputed.
And they weren't.
People were questioning if they would be one of the worst teams of all time, and they came out and they were the 10th seed in the East. They were,
Yes.
and actually, I think the Wizards might have dropped below them. I'm not 100% sure in the
In the
bubble.
bubble.
The Wizards might, because the Wizards like lost out in the bubble,
Oh
so I
yeah.
think they might have dropped below. But I mean, the Hornets were right there. They were in playoff contention,
Yeah.
and they improved drastically. They got the best player in the draft, LaMelo Ball, the player of the future for them. They signed Gordon Hayward. PJ Washington's going to improve.
Mhm.
They still got Devontae Graham. I think they'll move him over to shooting guard. Yeah, I agree they should probably get rid of Rozier because I think that's paying him a little too much money to not provide as much as he's going to.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Hornets. I think they're going to be in the play-ins. I think they're going to be contending for a
Okay.
playoff spot. If not, maybe taking that eighth seed. Who knows?
Yeah. No, the show definitely. I like LaMelo Ball. I mean, if you want to sell tickets, he was the perfect spot. If they had one or two, I even could have seen them taking LaMelo Ball at one or two.
Yeah,
I think just they got really lucky that LaMelo fell to three, and luckily the top two teams didn't need a ball dominant point guard. I think the Charlotte Hornets. I think they drafted right, and if LaMelo can turn out to be what everyone says LaMelo's going to be, you know, they got themselves a future All Star. So that's all they needed for that team.
he was the best player in the draft. I still think he was a
Yeah,
superstar. He's 20 years from now, LaMelo Ball is going to be the guy people remember from this draft class over Edwards and Wiseman. So I couldn't
right.
be more happy for the Hornets with this one. And praying we get to see a little Michael Jordan versus LeVar Ball one-on-one.
That definitely. I don't even. Dude, Michael Jordan would cook him. It wouldn't even be a close. I would love to
I
see it.
don't know.
I pay money to watch that. But
LeVar averaged 2.2 points per game in college. So you
don't
never
forget
know.
he was signed to the Carolina Panthers, the NFL roster. So he
Yep.
has experience playing professional sports. Oh
The
boy.
Charlotte connection.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So moving on to the recent Eastern Conference champions, the Miami Heat, who didn't make too many acquisitions. They just really re-signed Goran Dragic, which I think was an underrated thing because there was a lot of rumors about Dragic going to the top tier Western Conference teams in the Lakers and the Clippers. They got him back, and they even picked up Avery Bradley, who didn't play in the bubble. But what's your grade?
I gave him a B plus. I know they didn't make a lot of moves, so people might question that, but they made the most important one, and that was getting Dragic back. I mean, this team went to the NBA Finals and took two games from the Lakers. Like, I know all the hype is around the Bucks, the Nets, the Celtics in the East. Like,
They
people are
won the Heat.
forgetting the Heat beat the Bucks and the Celtics this year. I mean, this is the team that won the Eastern Conference, and were the team that was closest to taking down the Lakers. And
Yeah,
honestly, you think if Bam Adebayo and Gordon Dragic both didn't miss almost the entirety of the finals, things could have
could have
gone
won the
differently.
seven.
Could have gone differently. I mean, you never know. So I
I
think
don't know if they would have won,
with
but
that, okay, I don't think they would have won, but
no, I don't know.
you never know. You never know. I mean,
True.
Dragic was their leading scorer in the playoffs.
That is very true.
Dragic was fantastic. Bam stepped up big time defensively and offensively. Jimmy Butler showed
He's
everyone
Jimmy
that
Butler.
he's a superstar. I don't think
Yes.
there's any questions that he's a top 10 player in the league anymore. It
Yes.
still irks me that people think Damian Lillard's better, but well, that's a
Oh,
conversation for
hot
another
take.
day. Um, I mean, this Heat team is fantastic, and they brought everyone back that they needed to. They brought back all their
Yep.
key pieces, and I think the Bradley signing is underrated. I think when he was playing for the Lakers last year, he was one of their better players, probably third or fourth option after AD and LeBron. And
Hmm.
people forget about him because he missed out on the bubble and the championship run and all that. But he was a huge part of their regular season team, and I think he's going to step in and be the backup guard that you really need. I mean, him and Tyler Hero are going to make up a good bench
Oh,
guard duo because
without a doubt.
I I can't stand Kendrick Nunn. I think Kendrick Nunn is vastly overrated, so he shouldn't get playing time.
Wow.
I think they should have traded him while his value was at his highest. I mean, he takes bad shots and
He tried to be
decision
like
making's
he tried to
terrible.
be like a
Turns the ball
Michael
over.
Jordan in the bubble. He was like trying to create his own shot, doing crazy step back threes, and I'm like, Kendrick Nunn, what are you? Do you want to win?
Yeah,
Like, share the
I
ball
know.
a little bit. I agree with that. And so
I'm not a Kendrick Nunn fan, but I mean, otherwise, like we said, the Heat they brought everyone back. They've got the team chemistry as you can see from the playoffs this year. This is going to be a squad. They're going to compete again. There's no doubt about it in my mind. And they freed up. They kept all their cap room. I mean,
yes,
they still got enough money to sign next year if they want to go for Giannis.
yeah,
So we'll see how the Heat go this year. But to me they had one of the best off seasons in the East.
yeah. I could definitely. I see them being a contending team again. They're
Yep.
with Jimmy Butler and running that offense. I don't see how you can if Tyler Hero can even make another jump. He's one of my top five
Yep.
players in the NBA. I loved him even when they drafted him, and so
Yep.
I'm excited. I'm excited to watch Miami again and see where they fall compared to the other top
Yep.
notch teams in the East. A team we're not really going to talk about much because neither of us really care about their offseason is the Orlando Magic. The only real move they did was draft Cole Anthony, and that's why you probably give him an F. Yep.
I
And
did get
besides
there my only F.
Yep. And besides that, they literally did absolutely nothing. They kept the same core round. They were in contention a little bit. I saw for like DeMar DeRozan and some other forwards that were free agents, but they probably could have moved on from Aaron Gordon. I was expecting them to do that. They didn't do that either. All they did was
Vucevic.
draft.
I think
They
they
just
should have moved on
didn't.
from
Yeah.
Vucevic. They should have moved on from Gordon. They should have focused on developing guys like Mo Bamba and John Isaac and any
Markel
of their young
Fultz.
guys Markel Fultz. And they drafted Cole Anthony, which was a huge reach at 15. I mean, Cole Anthony isn't good enough to play at the college level right now, much less the NBA level. Cole Anthony amazes me how much hype he's gotten. I, I I watched him play in college a lot, and I was never impressed with Cole Anthony.
Yeah.
And I just think the Magic very mediocre last year, and all the other teams around them are getting better. They're not
Yeah.
getting any better. I mean, Evan
I don't think
Fournier.
they're
Why
going
do
to
you
be
still have
eighth seed
Evan
again.
Fournier? No, no. I mean, so many teams jumped them, and they're just staying the same. I mean, I gave them an F because, I mean, they went from a team that was in playoff contention to a team that they're probably going to be towards the back of the East just because they didn't get any better, and
Yeah.
everyone else did, and they had a terrible draft selection. So
I'm really hoping that I've been a huge fan of John Isaac since he came out of college. I've always
yep.
loved his. I think he has the potential to be a top three defender in the NBA. I think he's that good at the defensive side. I don't know if he'll ever develop that offensive game that we hope he does, but obviously he just got hurt, which sucked in the bubble. But I'm hoping that he can make a jump, and they really do choose Isaac over Gordon and move on from Gordon. Please move on from Gordon. I just don't like the fit there at all. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's really all we have to talk about the Magic. There's not really anything else. They didn't do anything important. They're probably
they
going to
didn't
fall
do
out
it
of the
enough.
playoffs because a team like even the Hawks will move up. The Cavs can
The
maybe
Hawks
even make the jump.
improved. The Hawks improved. The Hornets improved. I mean, the
Cavs
Bulls
improved.
they didn't improve. The Bulls didn't really improve, but I think they've got enough young
They have
guys like
Billy
on that
Donovan.
roster that they'll develop and they'll jump ahead of them. I mean, the Magic to me they're better than the teams like the Knicks, Cavs, and Pistons, but they're probably not far ahead of them.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last team in the East, who is one of the, they've got one of my favorite players in the NBA coming back off of injury, and they arguably had Zach and I's favorite player in the draft get drafted, which is the Washington Wizards with John Wall coming back and Denny Avdia as their selection.
I gave them a B minus, just
Exactly.
because I don't think they really didn't. I mean, they drafted Avdia, but they didn't make any splashes in free agency. And this is again another team that was just missing the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
Given John Wall's return, and I think the draft selection of Avdia was incredible. I think that was a steal all the way back at number 9. I had him going. We both had him going at number 4, and
Yeah.
I had him as a top 3 or 4 talent in the draft in itself. So I really liked the Avdia drafting, and I think he'll slot in as the starting small forward, and it's a good fit there. A lot of it depends on how John Wall does when he comes back too. But like I said, they didn't really make any other splashes. They got Robin Lopez. Either start center or back up Thomas Bryant. But they didn't make enough of a splash for me to give him a great grade, but they had a good draft. So and they didn't get any worse. So B minus, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, all I'm praying is that John Wall can come back and be a top 7 point guard in the league again. We've been waiting for the day for John Wall to come back. He's been out for 2 years now with those injuries, and it just sucks to see someone with his speed and he was a great point guard for his speed and athleticism, and now he's been injured twice. So interested to see how he comes back. Hopefully he doesn't interfere with Bradley Beal's 30 points per game scoring and still not being an all-star, which NBA, shame on you for that. But
yeah,
I'm excited to see that backcourt run it up again.
It was good to see that the trade rumors were mostly false about John Wall leaving there.
Yeah, hopefully.
Because, to me, he's a wizard at heart. So I'll be surprised to see him leave there. And they said that the rumors were not true, that he wanted out. So
yeah,
hopefully he stays around, and we'll see what the Wizards do with that backcourt once again. One of the deadliest backcourts in the league when they play together.
Sweet. And that wraps up our Eastern Conference talk about the offseason. Obviously there's probably gonna be some moves still made in the during training camps and probably during going into the season. But our next podcast will be about the other conference, the Western Conference, which is probably more competitive. So that'll be probably a lot more fun
exciting
to talk about. Yeah.
The West is great.
Exactly. Thank you to Channel 198 on Zingo TV for having us. And obviously thank you to I-95 Sports Network for having the MVP, Metnick, and Vinci Productions Sports Podcast today. And yeah, you got any last words?
No, that's really all I got for today. Stay tuned.
Go Sixers.
Western Conference go Sixers. Western Conference is interesting. So
exactly. And that's going to wrap it up. So thank you to everyone for joining, and we will see you guys all in the next podcast. Peace out.